mate. It's a bit of a short turnaround for your side coming up after the win over Wellington. How is the squad travelling fitness-wise? Do you anticipate anyone being out for the game?
The only one is TJ. So she pulled up her hamstring a little bit tight a couple of days ago in the Wellington match. So we're getting a scan later this afternoon to find out exactly what is happening there and how long she'll be out for. But we don't think it's too bad. So hopefully it's a week to two sort of injury and we can get her back in. Everyone else is fit and ready to go.
In terms of the short turnaround, how does that affect the way that you prepare things on the training track, especially given that we've had the Christmas period as well and family and all of that? How has you had to adjust over the past week?
Well, essentially, yesterday was the first day back after the match, so the players had a bit of a recovery session, nothing on the pitch. And then today we just finished a light 45, 50-minute session just to flush out the legs, get their touch in, a little bit of sharpness, but not too much. Obviously, we have a travel day as well, which obviously takes a bit of fatigue as well. So all in all, I think the preparations so far have been so good. The energy this morning was actually really high, so we had to try and calm it down a little bit because it's only 2 days post the match. But we wanted just enough to make sure they're ready to go for tomorrow. So we're in a good frame of mind. The energy is really high, so we're looking forward to this match.
In terms of the Wellington game, now that you've had a chance to go back, watch the film, assess it, what did you make of your side's performance across the 90?
I thought it was solid. I think we controlled the match. There were some moments in transition, which is something we're always trying to work on to improve. I felt, we didn't create enough in the first half. I thought our spacing between our lines was a bit narrow. So we tried to adjust that in the second half. And then obviously we're down 1-0. And I felt that was not a reflection of the match. But then we have 3 amazing subs to be able to come on in the 55th minute. And they obviously helped change the rhythm and the tempo of the match. And in the end, we rolled over them, and I think we were deserved winners.
Because you've shown in this season that you've got a side that is very, very capable of erasing deficits and coming back to win games. But I imagine you as a coach, you'd rather not have a deficit to overcome in the first place. How do you go about making that the case?
Look, we always take the positives out of everything. So, yes, I think, 1, we have a really strong squad. 2, I think our base fitness level and medical staff have done an outstanding job throughout the course of the pre-season, now the first third of the season. I don't think much needs to change. I think there's little details that we're always trying to improve. But for me, it's not a structural thing. Every time we've been down, it's not because the opposition have had 5 chances to our 1 chance. It's normally slightly in the opposite, where maybe they've had 1 or 2 chances and we've had 3 or 4, but we find ourselves 1-0 down. So I think, to be honest, apart from the Central Coast match, which I think earlier on in the season when it was 2-2 was an even match. I think it could have gone either way. And obviously the match we played against Sydney FC and we drew 1-1. That was a very even match, could have gone either way in my opinion. Apart from that, I think the other matches we were the better. So not too much needs to change. We have our tactical plan that we're continuing to evolve and improve on. But all in all, I think things are going quite well for us.
And Holly McNamara, we can see the progression that she's making, 19 minutes, 21 minutes, and then 35 minutes last week. You've got a busy period coming up as well. I think it's 3 games in around 10 days or so. Are you earmarking one of those games as a potential first start for her?
Probably not yet. I would say mid-Jan is we're probably feeling that's maybe a time for her, might be ready for a start. She's missed a lot of football and we're trying to build up her base. So I think for what she's giving us off the bench is outstanding, and we keep training in the training weeks that we do have ability to build some load into her. I think she's coming along quite nicely and making a really nice impact off the bench for us. And then, I would say come maybe the Brisbane or Western game mid-Jan is when probably she'll be ready to put her hand up to play a 60, 70 minutes from starting.
Mm. And of course, the A League Women doesn't have the January transfer window, but a lot of other leagues around the world do. And we saw how that affected the City squad last year, losing some key players at around this time of year. Are you anticipating any losing any players this year?
On a personal note, I hope not. That's probably a bit selfish of me, but for the team, and for the individuals, more importantly, if there's a good offer that comes to the club and the player wants to leave and wants to challenge themselves in a higher league, let's say, then obviously they'll have my blessing because I think it's excellent for the individual and to progress their career. Um, so let's see. This time of year happened last year. I've heard some whispers already that there's some players getting some interest. So let's see what happens.
But as far as you're aware, those are only whispers at that stage. You haven't been informed that there's any
No,
negotiations taking
no,
place or
no,
anything.
definitely no negotiations. But you're hearing whispers and rumors all the time in the football environment. So look, for me, if the player gets a good offer, they want to leave, and they want to play in a greater league, then I think it's excellent for the individual. Like I said earlier, on a personal note, it's not ideal, but I think we have a very strong squad that will be able to cope with whatever happens. And we always wish players well. If they move on to bigger things, then we're really excited for the individual in those moments.
Because I guess you as a coach, and obviously you've got the support of the City Football Department in this regard, but when you're confronted with something like this, wherein other leagues have windows but you don't, how do you go about actually, future proofing your plans? I mean, are you scouring the lists of players that were a free agent when the last Australian window closed about potential players that could come in? How do you approach things?
Yeah, 100%. We do have an idea and a bit of a list of players maybe that we could look at if a foreigner leaves, for an example, we may be able to bring in another foreigner. If an Aussie leaves, then maybe is there any Aussies that are around that we might be able to help boost the squad. But to be fair, I think we have a very strong squad. So we have 23 very capable players. We have a couple of injuries at the moment, but basically we nearly have a full squad. So if one or two get signed and move on, at this stage we wouldn't need to replace them.
Mm. And in terms of the Mariners, as you say, it was a bit of a back and forth contest with them earlier in the season. You were at home now you've got to travel to Gosford. What are you expecting tomorrow?
First of all, it's going to be the first time for me personally being at that beautiful stadium. So I'm looking forward to visiting that and coaching on the sideline. And so I think they're a very good side. I think they're very well organised, very well coached. They have some very dangerous players that we need to be aware of. So we've definitely planned and prepared for that. And we'll show a bit of a video at the hotel tonight when we arrive on some of their strengths and some of their things that we think we can exploit. But as we do, we prepare, we respect the opposition, but we really focus on what we are doing and how we can continue to improve. And so far that's working. But I think we just need to be focused on what we can control and do the best that we can in those moments.
Mm. It's currently top of the league at the moment, which I imagine was what you were hoping for when you took on this job. But what have you noticed about, I guess, as a sort of fresh set of eyes, newly in the A League Women environment, about what the league looks like this season? We've seen a few surprises. Brisbane Roar have, certainly kicked on. Sydney FC at the foot of the table. I don't think anybody was anticipating that. What have you noticed about the style of play in the A League Women this season, and has that maybe surprised you compared to what you saw as a non-involved observer in previous seasons?
Yeah, so when I was coach of the NTC girls, probably 6-7 years ago. I assisted with Adelaide United as well in one season. I was watching in more of a tactical way, the W League then. And probably over the last 3-4 years, I've sort of just watched as a fan every now and again, watching matches, taking on the job, observing what City did last year, and now obviously watching absolutely every game that I possibly can to learn about the league, to learn about the players, to learn the styles of coaches and what they do tactically. Um, I think it's a very even league. I'm very surprised with Sydney FC. I think that was probably our hardest game, to be fair, that we've played. They really pushed us all the way, and probably were unlucky not to win that match as well. So, yeah, I think anyone can beat anyone on their day. I think obviously us, Brisbane, and Victory have been a little bit more consistent in their wins, and we've sort of broken away a little bit. But it's very early. We're only 8 rounds in. There's still 2/3 of the season to go, so there's a long way to play. But you start seeing trends now. So it's for me on a coach's point of view. It's nice to see where we're at, and then it sort of tells me what we need to improve on, so I can start planning that in my training sessions.
Because there has been some looking around the league. It feels like it has taken on. Well, it's always had a transitional bent, but that's heightened a little bit this season. The games are even more quicker and back and forth. And I guess for you as a coach leading a side that wants to just have possession and sort of dictate terms in that way, how are you finding coaching in a league bent towards transition whilst adopting while trying to deploy a style that isn't transitionally based?
Well, I wouldn't say that we're not trying to be transitional. I think we're trying to prevent transitions, but there's moments that, yes, we want to dictate the play, but once we absorb pressure or once we break through that first line of pressure, then we want to play quite direct. We want to play quite fast, because the longer you take in our attacking half, the easier it is for the opposition to get set. So it's sort of a bit of cat and mouse sometimes in how you're trying to play. But the main thing for us is we want to dictate the ball and we want to create chances. How we do that is varied depending on what the opposition do. But the main point that you're making is that we want to control transition. So we don't want the game to be back and forth. So that's why sometimes we take that extra pass, that extra touch, to sort of slow the game and play on our terms. So, but I think world football is going that way in general, not just in the women's space. I think as players become more athletic, the game gets quicker, and it's definitely a lot harder. And we're seeing that in the top possession sides around the world. Struggle with the transition moments. So it's always a fine line in how you control that. But I think so far we're definitely getting better at it. I'll say that much.
And I just guess last one from me, mate. Touched on it before. You've got the short turnaround from this game, and then you've got Sydney FC 4 days later, and then I guess a bit of luxury, a 6-day break before Brisbane Roar. But in terms of your starting 11, are we going to see rotations for this game and future games as you look to, I guess, put the best 11 out there when accounting for fatigue, or how do you approach that? Or is it more on a game-by-game basis where you'll judge fatigue levels as they come?
Yeah, game by game. Our focus is 100% Central Coast. I'm not thinking at all for any games that are coming. We're obviously aware of it and we plan our training loads accordingly. But the main focus is put the best players out on the park that we feel is going to win the match against Central Coast. And as a player, you want to play games. So more games, the better. And I think once you step over that white line, there's no excuses. If you're putting your hand up as a player saying that you're ready to go, excuse me, then we're ready to go and we're ready to battle. And look, I think it's quite even. I know Central Coast had the extra day, but they had to fly from Perth, so I think that evens itself out. So I think both teams, have that sort of shortish turnaround. But once you step over that white line, there's never an excuse.